There are a number of things on my mind right now, and I'd like to simply share off the cuff with you. Would that be okay? I don't know how long this video is going to be. Obviously, you do, and you have because you see how long the video was. Recently, I have noticed there's this thing called chimping or chimping out. You might have seen clips, documentaries perhaps, of chimpanzees when angry due to perhaps unfair, as they perceive it, distribution of snacks and meals by zookeepers. One chimpanzee receives more than the others. The unfairly treated, according to their perception, chimps will then start flinging their fecal matter. They will rattle the cage if there is a cage to be rattled, or some such other, chimp out tantrum. That language and experience has been repurposed to describe what happens on the political right when President Donald J. Trump or another elected and therefore accountable to their constituents, to the people, Republican politician, does something or does not do something that the constituency likes or does not like. Meaning, the handling of the Epstein resulted in chimping out. Upon the previewing and teasing of this client list, and they're on my desk, these files, they're all there, says Pam Bondi, with Kash Patel and Bongino backing her up. And then it turns out, actually, no, there wasn't. And then in order to protect his employees, the president begins talking about Epstein as a hoax, the Democrat Epstein hoax. The what? After years upon years upon years of various influential figures on the American right talking about the necessity of prosecuting after publicizing the Epstein list, client list, the various individuals who were going to his island, Epstein, and doing business with him, perhaps being blackmailed by him, they're gone. They never existed. The children, those pure souls, were being trafficked to nobody. Really, Mr. Trump? Really, Mr. President? Cue the chimpouts. People like me, Jack Posobiec, Steve Bannon, who obviously have much larger followings than I, but even on down to internet anons with 1,000 followers who had pieces go viral about this. Not okay to tease justice and then walk it back and meme it into a hoax. We've subsequently, this past week, seen a collapse from February, in which the president's approval amongst all Gen Z of ages 18 to 29 in the 70s, unprecedentedly high. As far as I know, it was the age bracket that most people approving of the president, more so than boomers, more so than senior citizens. Gen Z, 18 to 29s, kids, young people, in the 70s in February, with all the things that he purported he was going to be doing. 5 months later, it has gone from the 70s to, if I remember correctly, less than 20%. A more than 50, I believe it was a 54-point total drop in approval. I might have the numbers slightly off, but the important picture here is Donald J. Trump, they call him far right. No, according to young people, he's not far to the right enough. As I say, his boomer is showing, as Donald Trump is one of the very first baby boomers. Perhaps this video is an example of chimping out, as we like to say metaphorically or hyperbolically speaking. The point is, you might have seen this graphic that shows the clusters of idea diversity on the right versus the left. The left is this tiny little point. I'm doing the bird hands thing like the girls on TikTok do when they're angry about their dates, who wanted them to pay Dutch. Go Dutch, pay 50-50. You can't ask me on a date if you're not going to pay me for, okay, whatever. But a tiny little cluster of ideas that the left has, no diversity. And then the right over here is this massive space of ideas. This is where the war of ideas is taking place. Not on the left over here. Okay, this little tiny pocket, little bird hand pocket, little craw. There's this massive field of ideas and diversity. where you have almost a new spectrum of left versus right, where it's like the nationalist populist, which I would consider myself among them, people like Steve Bannon speak well for. And then there's sort of the techno-libertarian right, which is sort of the juxtaposed like new left, you might say, from this perspective of the new right, of the large right. That would be like, let's say, Elon Musk and Chamath from the All In podcast. Okay, David Sachs, possibly Bitcoin guy. Okay, works for President Trump. That might be the techno-libertarian left. And then kind of all over the place are like your evangelical State of Israel fanatics who believe in the rapture and that sort of thing. They're a little all over the place. But there's this vast array of available opinions on the right that makes it a new landscape of an ideological battlefield of ideas. And if you do not fight for your position and your principles, you will not win. The squeakiest wheel gets the grease. And now, finally, it seems like in the past few days, President Trump has reneged on the reneging. And what that means is perhaps there will be something, and Ghislaine Maxwell is now being, it sounds like, is being interviewed by the Department of Justice, fortunately. So, okay, well, that's not nothing. It's a bit middle of the road, but the reason 18 to 29-year-olds are disappointed with Donald J. Trump so far into his presidency is because he is not populist enough. He's not nationalist enough. And that got me thinking. Nationalism and populism both have negative connotations nowadays. If you look at what mainstream magazines like, let's say The Economist, or perhaps liberal rags like Slate, New York Times op-ed pages are saying, when they talk about populism, they always talk about it as like uneducated HVAC Americans, plumbers, Home Depot sales associates. What do they know? They shouldn't be in charge of anything. What are they describing? They're describing a disdain for democracy, actually. Populism is like, okay, what do the people want? What do the people need? You know, your constituents? But they always frame it like democracy good, populism bad, even though you could describe them interchangeably. So they're using words manipulatively. It's like how vegan propaganda, if you've ever seen vegan propaganda, they don't talk about like normal people food. They say eating animals. See how this visual of like Haitians stealing kitty from next door? Okay, or the swans at the park? That's like eating animals. You mean like normal people food? Like, you know, pizza? Chicken fingers? Okay, like normal people food? You know, an omelet? They'll still say like animal products. No animals, no dead animals in the home, they'll say. You're hiding leather belt under the floorboards, aren't you? That's what it's like living with vegans, I understand. So they'll talk about dead animals, even though it's like, you mean my belt? My silk tie? Do you mean? You have blood on your hands. No, actually, I have wool in my pants, as that is what they are made of. That sort of left-wing redefining of terms to create new visual images. What's going on there? Well, it works because the word cloud associations, like dead animals, eating the cats, eating the dogs. Oh, that's ew, that's gross. That's not part of our culture. When really it's just like, have a freaking hot dog, okay? Like a normal person. Be normal. Be a human, okay? And we see that manipulative language showing up in various left-wing movements and in tribes, like vegans, of course, but also amongst Democrats. And it is rather annoying when we see the right use that sort of manipulation, like calling Epstein a hoax. Come on. But that's why we chimp, and that's why we're able to get the president to go back on going back on. Now, there was a point that I brought up a moment ago. I think we do need to untangle a bit with regard to this manipulation of language and how often you see it. I mentioned nationalism. Nationalism, they sort of try to have you think about nationalism, authoritarianism, nationalism, like Nazis and fascists, and they tried to have that sort of connotation, as I say. Well, what's really going on there? What is nationalism? That means you have a nation of people, populism, that you are responsible for. You are accountable to them. Take care of them. That is nationalist populism. I like to joke that the new NPR is Nationalist Populist Republic. That's the new NPR. Nationalist Populist Radio. It's just Steve Bannon's War Room, 24 hours, 7 days a week, broadcast through NPR. It's fresh air with Kevin Posobiec. He's done some hits on War Room, of course. The redefinition of language is irksome. Yes, this is true, which is why we have to sanitize this language and use the terms. Of course, people will like to refer to Francisco Franco as a fascist, but when you look up what fascism actually is, the Italian neighbor of Mussolini during that period, 20s and 30s, 40s, that's more appropriate to describe fascism, where it's a sort of centralized control of everything. Very similar, so as we saw in Germany, but they to use some buzzwords, fascism was the vehicle to institute nationally socialism. Nationally, socialism was brought throughout Germany in the 30s and early 40s through the vehicle of fascism. Okay? That's centralized. Everything goes through us. We are the party. The party is the state. Private property is still allowed, of course, unless you do or say the wrong thing, in which case you disappear. Private property not allowed in communism. I referred to communism as the ugly stepsister of fascism because ultimately neither of them allow for individual rights that much unless you're part of the favored classes. In which case, in fascism, sometimes it's like you're a member of the party, you're of the certain race, you're of the certain background. And then communism, it's you have to be a member of the party or you're nothing. It's a new rich and poor. You just wipe out the middle class so you don't have any meaningful resistance. But in Spain, you had something more akin to the judges of Israel. Are you familiar with that in the Old Testament? What we had Barak, we had Othniel, Ehud, Samson, Deborah. By the way, interestingly enough, I spoke with Vanessa Battaglia on the Repeal the 19th meme going around thanks to Nick Fuentes and other characters. But the Bible makes it clear that when a woman or women are in charge of a nation or are in leadership positions, that is demonstrative of a curse upon the land and upon the people. If you think about that, you realize why. And you'll go, oh, shit. Now, the point being, the judge of Israel was basically the boss for a season or for a generation. Remember the Spanish miracle, which was the recovery and transformation of Spain from an agrarian developing world economy into an industrial superpower that had almost nuclear capabilities under El Cadillo, the boss, Francisco Franco. Francisco Franco was like a Christian judge for Spain. That's a useful metaphor. And of course, in the Unhumans book, I believe it's chapter 5, we refer to the Spanish Civil War as the last crusade, as it was indeed righteous violence, a military uprising against a wickedly corrupt socialist/communist, murderous, lawless regime that turns out, by the way, stole the election. More things change, the more they stay the same. Am I right? Oh, speaking of, you see this little pin right here? It's a little fox. So this little fox right here. I was at a Renaissance festival a number of years ago, and this rather attractive ginger woman, a redhead American, she comes up just sort of randomly out of nowhere with this little fox pin, this little fox pin, and hands it to me. It disappears. She's gone. Strangest, most bizarre thing. I'm looking around like, what just happened? Now, I didn't know this, but I thought, why would she seek me out and give me a fox lapel pin? You see, it's a little fox. You can see it. Cute little guy. So I go look up word association. I'm thinking, what is fox in other languages? I work my way back to Polish, Czech languages, as I know that there were points where in Bohemia or modern day Czechia, Czech Republic, right? There are a number of Licecs living there. In fact, there's a Mount Lisec. Got to visit that at some point. My kids, maybe my brother too. Mount Lisec. Well, it turns out that in Polish, Czech, these other Slavic languages, fox, Lisec. Had no idea. Also, depending on the pronunciation, the spelling, Lisec, Lisec, Lisec. That's how it's pronounced in German, by the way. There's a company called Lisec. It's an industrial glass company, but in German they pronounce it. It's located in Germany, I believe, but it's pronounced Lisec. I don't know. Anyway, I thought fox. Huh, that's weird. Why would she give me that? Unless she knew. Total stranger. Redhead American. Then something funny. Lisec also in Czech. It's slang. And I read on Google. Lisec is slang and in Czech and refers to a bald, cunning, red-haired man. It refers to what? Yeah. Time to chimp.